Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take a whole stack of sources and, well, give you that essential knowledge shortcut you're looking for.
And today we're diving into a philosophy that feels both really old and somehow incredibly new. It challenges a lot of what modern psychology takes for granted.
Yeah, it promises this path to happiness that feels almost radical.
It is. Our main source is this fantastic dialogue format. Think Plato, but, focused on Alfred Adler's individual psychology. It's a back and forth between a philosopher and a pretty skeptical youth.
Who demands proof, which is helpful for us too.
Definitely. And our job here is to pull out that core insight, the thing that can really shift your perspective.
And Adler doesn't waste time. Right at the start, he makes this huge claim. The world is simple. Life is simple. And if you're unhappy, that's not fate. It's not your past dictating things.
He says unhappiness is something you choose.
Okay, that lands like a bombshell, right?
Yeah.
It forces you to rethink everything about cause and effect.
Absolutely. So today, we'll unpack how Adler basically denies the power of trauma as a determining force.
We'll look at why he insists all human suffering comes down to our relationships with other people.
And ultimately, how real freedom, real happiness, requires what he calls the courage to be disliked. It's quite a journey.
Okay, let's tackle that core conflict straight away, because really, everything else kind of flows from this. When we think about why we feel the way we do, most of us naturally lean towards etiology, right?
Etiology, the study of causes. In psychology, that's the Freudian legacy, essentially. It's all about looking back.
Yeah, finding the past cause for the present effect. If you're anxious now, you search for the childhood event, the trauma, the reason that made you this way.
Exactly. It frames the past as the direct cause, the thing that determines who you are right now.
It almost makes us sound like machines. Input happens in the past, and that dictates the output today. Your personality, your feelings, just consequences.
And that view implies a heavy kind of determinism. It suggests that changing now is hard, maybe impossible, until you've somehow fixed or resolved that past cause.
You're sort of stuck until you excavate the original wound.
But Adler just turns this completely around with teleology, T-E-O-L-O-G-Y.
Teleology, okay.
It shifts the focus entirely. Instead of asking, why did this happen, Adler makes us ask, what is the goal of my current state? What purpose does my current behavior serve right now?
So not past causes, but present goals.
Precisely. And this leads him to perhaps his most provocative claim. Trauma, in the way we usually mean it as something from the past determining our present. Well, Adler says it doesn't exist in that way.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
How does he justify that? Past events obviously happen.
Oh, absolutely. The events happen. They are the raw material. But Adler argues they don't determine your present state. You are the one who gives meaning to those past events.
So the event itself isn't the cause of my unhappiness.
Yeah.
It's the meaning I've attached to it.
Yes. And you attach that meaning to serve a current goal. Your unhappiness isn't a direct result of the past. It's being used now for a purpose.
The philosopher in the dialogue uses this idea of subjectivity, doesn't he? That we don't live in some objective reality, but one we've interpreted.
Exactly. He uses a great analogy. It's like choosing to wear dark sunglasses. You put them on, and suddenly the whole world looks dark and threatening.
But you chose to put them on. You could choose to take them off.
Right. The past events, the experiences, they're like the landscape, unchangeable.
Yeah.
But the glasses, the meaning you assign, that's your choice. So you're not controlled by trauma. Adler would say you might be using the meaning you gave that trauma to justify staying put or avoiding something difficult now.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The dialogue uses anger as a key example. The youth insists anger is just an impulse. Someone spills coffee on you, you get angry, cause and effect.
A very common view. But the philosopher counters with this brilliant story about a mother arguing furiously with her daughter. She's shouting, seems completely lost in rage.
Uncontrollable emotion, supposedly.
Right. But then the phone rings. It's the daughter's teacher. Instantly, the mother stops shouting, picks up the phone, and speaks calmly, politely. Total change. And immediately resumes shouting at her daughter with the exact same intensity.
Ah, okay, I see. If the anger was truly an uncontrollable effect of her daughter's actions, she couldn't just switch it off like that.
Precisely. Her ability to pause it, to control it perfectly for the phone call, proves it wasn't an uncontrollable impulse. It was a tool.
A tool.
Yes. A tool she chose to use to achieve a goal with her daughter, maybe submission, maybe just winning the argument, asserting power. It was useful for that interaction, but for the phone call with the teacher.
Not useful. Politeness was the better tool for that goal.
Exactly. Anger can be manufactured, deployed, and put away again when it serves a present purpose, a present goal, even if that happens incredibly fast, almost unconsciously.
So that feeling of boiling rage I might get in an argument,
Yeah.
Adler's saying I'm not just feeling it, I'm on some level choosing to deploy it as a weapon.
That's the challenging implication. You chose it because in that moment, you judged it the most effective way to dominate or manipulate or achieve whatever your immediate goal was in that interpersonal dynamic.
Wow. That shifts the responsibility entirely back onto me.
It does. Once you accept that anger serves a purpose and can be controlled, the whole idea of being helplessly driven by emotions starts to crumble. It really forces this idea of free will, doesn't it? If we're driven by present goals, not past causes, then we always have the choice to change the goal.
Okay, so if we buy into this teleological view that we're acting based on present goals, then we have to confront that really difficult Adlerian claim you mentioned at the start.
That unhappiness is a choice.
Yeah. How does that even work? It sounds almost like blaming the victim.
It's tricky, and it's grounded, interestingly, in some classical Greek ideas. The philosopher points out the Greek word for good, agathon, basically means beneficial, and evil, kakon, means not beneficial. The crucial part is the Socratic idea that no rational person intentionally chooses something they believe is not beneficial for them.
Right, you always choose what seems good or beneficial at the time, even if it turns out badly later.
Exactly. So, applying that logic, if you are currently in a state of unhappiness, Adler argues you must, on some level, have judged that state or the lifestyle that maintains it to be good or beneficial for you in some way.
Beneficial? How can being unhappy be beneficial?
Well, think about the youth in the dialogue. He says he wants to be happier, more outgoing, like his friend, but he feels stuck, paralyzed.
Right.
The philosopher argues this paralysis isn't inability, it's a choice. He's choosing to maintain his current, familiar, albeit unhappy lifestyle because it provides some hidden benefit.
What kind of benefit? Safety.
That's a huge part of it. Safety and predictability. The current lifestyle, even if it's uncomfortable, is known. It's like driving a familiar old car that rattles. You know its quirks, you know how it will react. The results of your actions are predictable.
And that predictability feels easier.
Yeah.
Less scary.
Much easier than the alternative. Changing your lifestyle, becoming that happier, outgoing person, that's like getting into a brand new, unfamiliar car.
It's uncertain. You don't know how it handles, what might happen. It's full of anxiety.
Exactly, the anxiety of change. And often that anxiety feels worse, more threatening than the chronic, low-level discomfort of the current unhappiness.
So the benefit of staying unhappy is avoiding that acute anxiety of stepping into the unknown.
Yes, and it provides other things too. It can become an excuse. I can't pursue that relationship because I'm too shy. I can't apply for that job because I lack confidence. The unhappiness, the perceived flaws become a shield.
A shield against having to try and possibly fail.
Precisely. It protects you from testing yourself, from potentially facing rejection or embarrassment. It allows you to maintain the potential of being happy or successful without risking the reality.
So if I keep saying I wish I could change but never do, I'm using that wish as an excuse to avoid the actual fear of trying.
That's the Adlerian interpretation. It's why the source material really hammers home this idea. Adlerian psychology is a psychology of courage.
It's not about lacking skills or ability.
No, you likely have the competence. What's missing, Adler would say, is the courage. The courage to face the anxiety of change, the courage to step into that unfamiliar car, the courage, ultimately, to be happy. It takes courage to choose a different path.
Okay, so if our problems aren't truly caused by the past, and they aren't just uncontrollable emotions hitting us, where does Adler say they do come from?
He makes another one of his huge sweeping statements here. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
All of them, like every single one, even feeling bad about myself when I'm alone.
That's his position. It sounds extreme, but his logic is that even seemingly internal issues like self-dislike or loneliness only make sense in the context of other people.
How so?
Well, think about loneliness. You can only feel lonely if you conceive of others existing somewhere, right? If you were truly the only being in the universe, the concept wouldn't even arise.
Okay. And self-dislike. Finding flaws in myself.
Adler would argue that we often find flaws in ourselves for the sake of our relationships, or rather, to manage them. Disliking yourself can be a way to preemptively lower others' expectations or to create a reason to avoid deeper connection and the potential pain that comes with it.
So, I can't get close to people because I have these flaws becomes a justification for keeping distance.
Exactly. The flaws serve an interpersonal goal, self-protection, avoiding vulnerability. The feeling is directed inward, but its purpose relates outward to others.
Okay. To understand these interpersonal dynamics better, Adler makes a distinction about feelings of inadequacy. There's a healthy kind and an unhealthy kind.
Yes. He talks about the feeling of inferiority, Minderwertigkeitsgefühl in German. This is just that basic subjective sense that you're not perfect, that you fall short of some ideal.
Which everyone feels sometimes.
Absolutely. And it's actually positive, Adler says. It's the spur for growth, for striving. I'm not good at this yet, so I'll work harder. It motivates improvement. That's healthy.
But then there's the unhealthy version.
The inferiority complex. This is different. This is when you take that feeling of inferiority and use it as an excuse.
Ah, okay, like saying, I can't succeed because I'm not educated enough.
Precisely. It sets up this false logic. Because A, my perceived lack, therefore B, success, is impossible. Adler calls this apparent cause and effect. You're creating a causal link that isn't necessarily real to justify not striving, not taking the risk.
And often, people with an inferiority complex might secretly believe they are superior, just held back by this one thing.
Which leads right into the flip side, the superiority complex. This isn't real confidence, Adler stresses. It's usually a cover-up for intense feelings of inferiority.
Like someone who constantly boasts or needs to show off expensive things.
Exactly. Or name-dropping, associating themselves with powerful people or brands. Adler called this giving authority. They feel so lacking in inherent worth that they have to borrow it to appear superior because they don't feel it inside.
They're constantly trying to impress others, living by external validation.
Yes, living according to other people's value systems. It's all driven by this underlying unhealthy comparison.
Which seems tied to viewing life as a competition.
That's a core problem, according to Adler. If you see life and relationships as a competition, then everyone else becomes
A rival. An enemy, almost. Someone you have to beat, or at least not lose to.
Right, and that makes the world feel inherently dangerous. You can't trust anyone. You always have to be on guard.
And even if you win in this competitive view, the philosopher says you find no peace.
None at all, because you're constantly worried about the next challenger, about losing your top spot, about being attacked. It's exhausting.
It reminds me of that anecdote about the teenager fussing with their hair and the grandmother saying, you're the only one worrying how you look.
Exactly. That fear of judgment, that self-consciousness, it's often massively overblown and fueled by seeing others as judges in a competition rather than just people living their own lives.
But what happens when this competitive mindset leads to actual conflict? A fight, an argument.
Adler calls this a power struggle. The goal isn't truth or understanding. The goal is simply to win, to prove your power or righteousness over the other person.
And if you feel like you've lost that struggle,
then, Adler warns, the relationship very quickly escalates to the revenge stage. This is a really sobering part of the theory.
Revenge stage, how does that manifest?
It can range from passive aggression or defiance, all the way to things like delinquency in children or even self-harm. Adler interprets these not as simple effects of past mistreatment, but as actions with a present goal, to inflict pain back onto the person perceived as the victor or oppressor.
So a child acting out or hurting themselves?
Yeah.
The goal might be to make the parents worry, suffer, and feel guilty. That's the revenge.
That's the teleological interpretation. The behavior serves the goal of revenge, of causing distress to those they feel powerless against. It's purposeful, even if not consciously articulated.
That's heavy. How do you avoid getting into that cycle?
The only way, Adler insists, is to refuse to participate in the power struggle from the outset. When conflict arises, you have to step down immediately.
Step down, like just give in.
Not necessarily give in on the substance, but refuse to fight for dominance. He specifically says admitting fault, if you are at fault, is not defeat. If you get stuck on I am right, the focus shifts from the issue itself to winning the battle, and that guarantees escalation towards revenge. You have to sidestep the power struggle altogether.
Focus on moving forward, not winning.
Exactly. Pursue your own improvement, not victory over others. And this need for non-competitive advancement leads us to Adler's concept of life tasks.
Right, the areas where we need courage in our relationships.
He outlines three main categories. First, work tasks. These are often the easiest, he says, because there's usually a clear common goal, like completing a project. Cooperation is built in.
Makes sense.
Second, friendship tasks. These are harder because there's no external obligation like work. It requires more proactive effort and courage to initiate and maintain connections. And third, the love tasks. These are the most difficult, involving the closest relationships, romantic partners, family. The intimacy brings the greatest potential reward, but also the greatest fear of restriction, rejection, or pain.
And that fear of restriction.
Yeah.
That's where things like jealousy come in.
Yes. Adler sees jealousy largely as rooted in distrust and a desire to control, stemming from that competitive, vertical mindset. He argues that real love requires trusting the other person's freedom and natural state.
Okay, so if all problems are interpersonal, and we need to avoid these competitive power struggles, how do we actually navigate relationships successfully? What's the practical tool?
This is probably the single most actionable and revolutionary concept in Adler, the separation of tasks.
Separation of tasks.
This is the key to unlocking freedom in relationships, according to Adler. The basic principle sounds simple. You need to figure out what is your task and what is someone else's task, and then don't interfere in their tasks. Discard other people's tasks.
Okay, simple in principle maybe, but how do you actually know whose task something is? Especially when you care about the other person.
There's a clear test. You just ask. Who ultimately receives the result brought about by the choice that is made? Whoever bears the final consequence, that's whose task it is.
Let's use that classic example. The child who won't study. The parent is obviously invested, worried.
Terribly worried. And they often feel it's their task to make the child study. They intervene, like pressure, they nag, often saying, I'm doing this for your own good.
But applying the test, who gets the bad grades if the child doesn't study? Who misses out on opportunities?
The child. Ultimately, the consequences land on the child. Therefore, studying is the child's task.
So the parent's intervention, even if well-intentioned,
is often actually about fulfilling the parent's goals, Adler would argue. Maybe meeting society's expectations of a good parent. Maybe satisfying their own need for control. Maybe managing their own anxiety about the child's future. The child often senses this, that it's not really about them, but about the parent.
So the parent intervening is meddling.
Adler distinguishes between meddling, which is intervention, and assistance or encouragement. You shouldn't be indifferent. You should let the child know you're there to help if they ask, but you don't force the help or take over the task. You can offer support, resources, encouragement.
Lead the horse to water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you cannot force it to drink. That's crossing the line into interfering with the child's task.
And this applies just as much to adult relationships. My partner's habits, my friend's career choices.
Absolutely. If your partner has a habit you dislike, you can express your feelings, you can offer support if they want to change, but ultimately changing that habit is their task because they bear the primary consequences of it. How they feel about your disapproval or how they choose to respond, that's also their task.
Okay, this leads to a really powerful point then. What someone else thinks about me, whether they like me, approve of my choices, judge me. Applying the test, the consequence of their thoughts and feelings lands on them.
Precisely. Their opinion of you, their judgment, their approval or disapproval, that is fundamentally that person's task, not yours.
Wow, that feels freeing, but also kind of scary.
That's exactly where the courage comes in. Because we are deeply wired to seek approval, to worry about judgment. If you're constantly trying to manage how others see you, trying to live up to their expectations, chasing their recognition,
you're completely unfree. You're letting their tasks dictate your life, like running on tracks they lay down for you.
Exactly. Adler describes freedom not as rolling downhill with your natural inclinations, like the desire for approval, but as actively pushing uphill against those inclinations, choosing your own path based on your own tasks and goals, regardless of whether others approve.
So freedom requires rejecting that deep-seated need for recognition.
Yes, and that's why he links freedom directly to the courage to be disliked. Unless you are willing to accept that living authentically means some people will dislike you or disapprove of your choices.
And accepting that their disapproval is their problem to manage, their task.
Then you cannot be truly free. The cost of freedom is being unconcerned by judgment and having no fear of being disliked. The courage to be happy includes the courage to be disliked.
It's not about trying to be disliked, obviously.
Not at all. It's about not letting the fear of potential dislike paralyze you or divert you from your own tasks and your own path. You proceed knowing that disapproval from others is their task to handle, not yours to prevent.
Okay, before we talk about what this free life actually looks like in practice, let's quickly touch on the name Adler chose. Individual psychology. Sounds like it's all about the self, but you mentioned it means something else.
Right. It's a bit misleading in modern English. The individual part comes from the Latin individuus, meaning indivisible.
Indivisible. So it points towards holism.
Exactly. Adler saw the human being as a unified whole. Mind and body, reason and emotion, conscious and unconscious, they aren't separate warring factions. They all work together indivisibly towards a single goal in any given moment.
So when I shout in anger, it's not some separate emotion taking over.
It's I as a whole choosing to shout, using all aspects of myself, mind, body, emotion, to achieve the goal that anger serves in that moment. You can't compartmentalize and blame just one part of yourself.
Got it. So if we manage to separate tasks, embrace this kind of freedom and indivisibility, what's the ideal state of relationships that Adler envisions? What's the goal?
The goal is what he called community feeling, or sometimes translated as social interest. It's about seeing other people fundamentally as comrades, not competitors or enemies.
The comrade, okay.
And developing a deep sense of belonging within the community, that feeling of, it's okay for me to be here. But it's not passive. It comes from actively contributing to that community.
And the big obstacle to this community feeling is being self-centered.
Yes, particularly the trap of shifting from seeing yourself as the protagonist of your own life, which is healthy, to seeing yourself as the protagonist of the world.
Meaning you expect everyone else to revolve around you.
Pretty much. You start seeing others primarily in terms of how they serve you. People who will do something for me. And when, inevitably, they don't meet those inflated expectations.
You get resentful. They become adversaries, enemies.
Exactly. And poof, the community feeling, the sense of comradeship, is gone. You feel isolated and surrounded by potential threats.
So to build that community feeling, we need to move away from this self-centeredness and relate to people differently.
Yes, Adler insists we need a fundamental shift from vertical relationships, those based on hierarchy, superiority, inferiority, like the competitive model,
to horizontal relationships, relationships based on equality, mutual respect, seeing others as different but equal comrades.
And the most practical, maybe controversial way he says we enforce vertical relationships without realizing it is through praise and rebuke.
Wait, even praise?
Yeah.
We think of praise as good, positive reinforcement.
Adler argues against it quite strongly because praise, by its very nature, implies a hierarchy. It's the passing of judgment by a person of ability on a person of no ability.
Like a teacher praising a student, or a boss praising an employee.
Yes. The person doing the praising is positioning themselves as superior, as the judge of the other person's worth. It creates a dynamic where the person being praised becomes dependent on that external top-down validation. It's a subtle form of manipulation reinforcing the vertical structure.
Okay. So if we can't praise and we shouldn't rebuke, which makes sense in avoiding power struggles, how do we show appreciation or encourage positive behavior without falling into that trap?
Through what Adler calls the encouragement approach. This is assistance or feedback given within a horizontal framework instead of judgmental praise like, good job, or you're so smart.
Which implies I am the judge of what's good or smart.
Right. Instead, you focus on expressing gratitude, respect, and acknowledging the person's contribution from an equal footing.
Like saying, but.
Simple things like, thank you, or that was a big help, or I really appreciate the effort you put into that, or I'm grateful for your contribution.
So the focus is on appreciation and contribution, not judgment of inherent quality.
Exactly. Hearing a sincere thank you makes someone aware of their concrete contribution to the community or the relationship. It confirms their worth through their actions and usefulness, building that sense of belonging.
Without making them dependent on your judgment of their inherent ability, it keeps the relationship horizontal.
Precisely. It fosters self-reliance and reinforces their value as an equal comrade, rather than creating a need for approval from someone perceived as superior.
All right, so we're aiming for horizontal relationships, community feeling, built on separating tasks and having courage. How do we cultivate the right internal state for all this? Especially if we're prone to self-dislike, which we said is often a choice.
Adler makes a really key distinction here between what most people think of as positive thinking and what's actually needed. He contrasts self-affirmation with self-acceptance.
Self-affirmation being like telling yourself, I can do it, even if you can't.
Kind of. It can border on delusion, ignoring reality. Adler wasn't keen on that. He advocated for self-acceptance, which he describes almost as an affirmative resignation.
Affirmative resignation. That sounds a bit downbeat.
It's not meant to be. It means calmly accepting your irreplaceable self exactly as it is right now, acknowledging the things you cannot change, and then, crucially, focusing affirmative energy on what you can make use of, what you can do, starting from that point of acceptance.
So accept the things you can't do or the flaws you have without judgment and focus on leveraging what you do have.
Exactly. It's about working with the reality of yourself, not wishing you were someone else or magically different.
And building those strong horizontal relationships, that requires a certain kind of belief in others, doesn't it? Especially if we're trying not to be competitive or suspicious.
Yes. Adler draws another important line here between trust and confidence.
Okay, what's the difference for him?
Trust, in Adler's view, is conditional. It's based on security, collateral, past behavior, like a bank trusting you with a loan if you meet certain conditions. If the conditions aren't met or the security disappears, the trust is withdrawn.
It's transactional almost.
Right. Confidence, on the other hand, is unconditional. It's choosing to believe in the other person's fundamental value as a human being, as a potential comrade, without demanding objective proof or security.
So you believe in them even if they haven't earned it in a transactional sense, even if they might let you down.
That's the really hard part. Adler says yes. Even if you get taken advantage of, you continue to hold that fundamental unconditional belief in people. Not naively, perhaps, but as a baseline stance.
Why? Isn't that just setting yourself up to be hurt repeatedly? Where's the self-protection?
The protection, again, comes from the separation of tasks and self-acceptance. You accept that extending unconditional confidence carries a risk. But crucially, whether the other person betrays that confidence or lives up to it, that is their task, not yours.
My task is only to offer the confidence to act sincerely from a place of belief in potential comradeship. How they respond is on them.
Exactly. If you operate purely on conditional trust, always demanding proof, always fearing betrayal, you'll never build deep, genuine connections. Your suspicion itself will likely create distance and confirm your fears. Unconditional confidence is the necessary foundation for true community feeling.
Okay. And once we have this self-acceptance, this confidence in others, this allows us to find our own worth through contribution.
Yes. Contribution to others is central. While work is necessary and money is useful, Adler apparently called money coined freedom, which is interesting.
Yeah.
The real essence of work, and life really, is contribution to the common good, to the community. It's that subjective feeling I am of use to someone that truly anchors our sense of belonging and personal worth.
More than status or income level.
Absolutely. Though he also cautioned against using work as an escape. If someone becomes a workaholic, burying themselves in work to the exclusion of friendship and love tasks.
That's likely what he called a lifeline. Using work as an excuse to avoid harder interpersonal challenges.
Precisely. It's about balance and genuine contribution across the life tasks.
This brings us back to something we touched on earlier, the pressure to be special and the fear of just being ordinary.
Right. Adler talked about the courage to be normal. He observed that kids who feel they can't succeed at being especially good often flip and try to be especially bad.
Like delinquency, acting out.
Yeah. It's still a way to get attention, to feel special, to stand out from the crowd. It's what he called the pursuit of easy superiority. Because being genuinely good takes effort, but being dramatically bad is, in a way, easier to achieve notoriety with.
So the antidote is accepting ordinariness.
It's accepting your normal, average self, asking, why must I be special? In a world obsessed with exceptionalism, especially now with social media showcasing curated perfection.
Just accepting being okay, being normal, and finding value in simple contribution. That actually takes immense courage.
A profound act of freedom, he'd say. And this ties into his final radical reframing, how we view life itself.
He argues against seeing life as a line, right? Like climbing a mountain towards some future goal.
Exactly. That linear view means most of your life is spent en route, just preparing, just a means to an end. You're living a tentative life, always waiting for the real thing to start at the summit.
But life isn't like that.
No. Life, Adler says, is a series of moments, like points or like dancing. We only ever live in the here and now. The past is gone, the future isn't here yet. All we have is this present moment.
So we should focus entirely on living this moment fully, like dancing in the now.
Yes, commit fully to the dance of the present moment. And what guides us, what keeps us oriented without needing a fixed destination point in the future, he calls it the guiding star.
And the guiding star is?
That ideal of, I contribute to others. As long as you keep that expansive sense of contribution in view, you won't lose your way. You can live each moment freely, dance fully now, make your contribution now, without being paralyzed by past regrets or future anxieties or worries about who approves. #Tautro.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed pretty deep into Adler's world today. From etiology versus teleology, this idea that all problems are interpersonal.
The huge concept of separation of tasks, leading to that necessary courage to be disliked.
And finding worth through community feeling, contribution, and living fully in the here and now.
It really does offer a fundamentally different framework for thinking about happiness and freedom. And what strikes me is the sheer amount of agency it gives back to you, the individual.
Yeah, you realize you're not just reacting to the world or your past. By understanding these principles, especially the separation of tasks, you're actually holding the cards in your interpersonal relationships.
You're not changing yourself to try and manipulate others that's still playing the old vertical game. You change your own goals, your own approach based on your tasks.
But the knock-on effect is often that others around you, they almost have to adjust, to change in response to your newfound clarity and freedom.
It can be quite profound. Which brings us to that final, really provocative quote from the philosopher, summing up the ultimate implication.
Right. He says, if I change, the world will change.
This means that the world can be changed only by me, and no one else will change it for me.
That puts the power and the responsibility squarely back in your hands. A challenging thought to end on.
Definitely something to mull over.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope this gives you some powerful tools to think about your own life and relationships.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.